Thanks so much for coming in today, Jed and Stephen. The goal of this meeting this conversation is to strengthen your confidence and skill in handling workplace conflict and grievances. And I want this to be quite a practical session, so the kind where we can walk out and immediately feel more equipped to deal with this. So what we're going to do initially is look at the policies that we need to follow, and we'll talk through two common issues that we've come across. Poor management behaviour and unmanageable workloads. I'll check in with you both to confirm your understanding, and I also want honest feedback about any gaps or shortcomings that you've noticed in today's session and in these policies. I want it to be kind of more of a two-way conversation. So we'll just start by running over our policies and a guide of how we respond to workplace issues. So the first one is our conflict resolution policy. This emphasises the aim for a positive work environment where concerns can be resolved quickly and fairly. It states that employees can raise issues informally with their supervisor, but also have the right to formally lodge a conflict resolution request. It requires supervisors to investigate and respond to that request within 5 working days once a formal request has been submitted. And that time frame is important, so we'll touch on that later with what happens if you struggle to meet that 5-day time frame. The second is our employee grievance policy. So this policy is used when an issue is more serious or sensitive, so that can be harassment or unsafe working conditions, a poor supervisor or manager behaviour. It outlines how an employee can lodge a formal grievance, how investigations happen, how mediation can be used, and that employees have the right to appeal. So it emphasises confidentiality, fairness and safety. Do those descriptions feel accurate based on what you know about our policies already?
Yes, and I think hearing them together helps me see the differences in both grievance and conflict processes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Same. I keep forgetting the 5-day response requirement until I see them written down.
No problem. We'll touch on that a little bit later today. I'll make sure that we don't forget that as well. So just moving forward for now, we do like to use a layered approach when dealing with issues, and both of you as managers need to know which one fits which situation. So I'll walk through the 3 different levels that we have here. The first is an informal resolution. This is the first step for everyday workplace issues. So think of a misunderstanding between staff, a miscommunication about duties, minor personality differences. It's about giving people the chance to talk and resolve things with support, using open-ended questions, active listening, clarification, and ensuring real empathy. The next one we have is a formal conflict resolution. This step is used when an informal attempt hasn't resolved the issue, or if the concern is actually structural, meaning it's workload related, hours, roster issues, role changes, resourcing shortages, or anything operational. So in this, the employee then submits a written conflict resolution request, and you must investigate it, consult with HR where needed, and provide a written outcome within 5 working days. The next thing that we have is a formal grievance procedure. This is for serious or sensitive issues like poor or inappropriate manager behaviour, harassment, safety risks, and behaviour that undermines trust or breaches our policies. A formal grievance triggers a structured investigation, a mediation, and a formal decision with the right to appeal. It's important to know the differences because they determine the correct pathway for the employee and also for both of you. So now we can run through some scenarios. So I'll start with the first scenario, which is poor manager behaviour. Imagine an employee comes to you and says that their room leader has been rude, dismissive, or consistently undermining you in front of colleagues. This employee feels unsafe approaching them directly and doesn't feel comfortable trying to resolve it informally. This is not a conflict resolution case, it's a grievance. When the complaint is about a person in authority, especially if there's emotional harm or a power imbalance, informal resolution isn't appropriate in this case. Instead, we go straight to the grievance process. Here, in this case, what we'll need to do is firstly listen actively. So we want to use open body language, nod, and give space for the employee to speak. Next, we want to acknowledge their experience. People do need to feel validated with their experiences. Then we want to explain that this situation aligns with a grievance pathway, not a conflict resolution. Support them in completing a formal grievance form. And reassure them about confidentiality and that we don't tolerate any retaliation. We then submit the grievance to HR, and then we can participate in any mediation or investigation while staying neutral and supportive to both parties. So Jed, if an employee came to you with this complaint, how would you respond?
I'd make sure that they feel that they're in a safe environment. I'd listen to them very carefully. I would, if they require, help them lodge any grievance forms, and instead of pushing them to talk to the manager directly, I would encourage them to do this path with speaking with me.
Perfect, exactly. So this protects the employee emotionally and also ensures that the process is fair and safe for them.
Okay.
Now we can take a look at the second scenario, which is an unmanageable workload. So you want to imagine that an employee from a team of 2 suddenly becomes the only person in that role due to a redundancy or a staff shortage. Their responsibilities double. Documentation piles up, they're skipping lunch breaks, they're going home late, and their stress is rising. This is a structural issue, not a behavioural one, meaning that it belongs in the formal conflict resolution process. This type of issue is also supported by our enterprise agreement, which discusses the importance of reasonable hours, rostering stability, and employer responsibility to consider the employee's well-being, family responsibilities, and also just their workload. So the steps that we would take for this is we would meet with the employee privately, thank them for raising the issue. We want to ask open-ended questions. So questions like, which part of this workload feels unmanageable? Have you been able to take your breaks consistently? Then we want to review evidence. Evidence can be things like rosters, tasks, ratios, and admin load. We can then help them submit a formal conflict resolution request. We then need to investigate the issue. So this includes exploring things like redistribution of tasks, bringing casual relief support, temporary adjustments of expectations for that employee. We also want to provide a clear written outcome within that 5 days. Once that's done, we want to then review that plan after 2 weeks, just to make sure it's working, see how the employee is feeling, and then if we need to do anything further from that. Stephen, how would you take the first step with someone experiencing this?
Well, I'd meet with them and ask them to walk me through their workload and support them to lodge a conflict resolution to request, so we can properly investigate and adjust things.
Perfect, that's exactly what we need to do.
I'll be honest, the 5-day response time frame sometimes stresses me out. If an issue is complicated or involves multiple conversations, I feel like I can't do it through a job in that window.
Yep, of course. Thank you for bringing that back up and reminding me that it's on our agenda. It's actually a really common concern. So the 5-day requirement is there to ensure that the employee doesn't feel ignored, but it also doesn't mean that you are expected to do the whole entire process alone. So if the investigation becomes too complex to finish thoroughly within that 5-day period, or if meeting the deadline is putting pressure on your own workload or your well-being, then you need to come to HR immediately and we can help. So the steps that we can take to help would be temporarily adjusting or delegating some of your workload, assisting in gathering statements or documents, helping conduct the interviews, drafting or co-authoring the written response, and supporting a reasonable extension if needed. The important thing is that both you and the employee in question both feel supported. The procedure should not compromise anyone's well-being or make you feel trapped.
That's a huge relief. I didn't realise there was that much support available. I felt like I had to do it entire investigation alone.
Not at all. We're all definitely here to help and make sure that everyone feels supported and safe. So now that we've covered that, I'd like to shift into a quick reflection exercise. I want you to think of a time where an employee brought a concern to you, no specific names needed, and I want you to consider, did you use active listening? Did the employee feel heard? Did you ask enough questions to fully understand their perspective? Did you reflect their feelings back to them? Did you explain the steps clearly? And did you document your interaction? Jed, what comes to mind for you?
I think I'm pretty good with most of them, active listening and making the employer feel heard. But sometimes I feel maybe I jump in too quickly to find a solution. And I just find it a bit hard to then think about the next steps I should be doing because I'm concentrating on a solution.
Yeah, perfect. That's actually a really helpful insight and absolutely true.
Yeah.
People do need connection before problem solving.
Yeah.
Stephen, do you have anything that comes to mind?
I've noticed sometimes I focus too much on the operational side and not enough on how the issue makes the person feel.
That awareness is fantastic, actually. Emotional impact is just as important as the practical issue. So we can practice this with a scenario. So 2 employees come to you and say that their colleague left, they've been skipping breaks to keep documentation up to date. One says they're exhausted, the other says they might look for another job if things don't improve. First question I'll ask is this a conflict resolution or is it a grievance issue?
Conflict resolution because it's about the structural workload.
Perfect, that's right. Second question, Stephen, I'll go to you. What's the first thing that you would do?
I'd meet with them individually or together, listen carefully and make sure they feel heard and supported.
Perfect. Third question I'll throw to you again, Jed. What steps would you follow?
I would submit a formal resolution request. I would review their workloads and find solutions that ensure that they are taking their appropriate breaks.
Perfect. And you'd also there, Jed, addressing a work health and safety concern. So missed breaks are definitely a workplace safety issue. So before we wrap up, I want to check your understanding. Can one of you maybe summarise the difference between a conflict resolution matter and a grievance?
Conflict resolution, is it for operational or structural issues like workload, resources? Grievances are for serious behavioural issues like manager misconduct.
Spot on. Jed, would you be able to summarise what you would do if someone complained about workload becoming unmanageable?
I'd listen to them. I'd help them lodge a conflict resolution request. I would investigate the workload involved. I'd investigate their workload. I'd also involve HR in the situation and follow up afterwards.
Excellent. That's exactly what we'd do. Now I'd like to hear from both of you on one final thing. Did you see any gaps or shortcomings in our current conflict grievance procedures?
I think it'd be helpful if the policies provided more examples, especially of what counts as unreasonable workload and poor management behaviour.
That's great feedback. That's something that we can absolutely bring up in a policy review discussion.
Yep.
Stephen?
For me, it's the 5-day requirement. Still feels tough sometimes. I understand why it's there, but adding some flexibility for complex cases might make it easier.
That's completely fair, and again, something that I can raise with HR leadership. It's important that this process works for the people managing it as well, not just the people using it.
Yeah.
I want to thank you both for your openness today. You've engaged thoughtfully with each part of my discussion. I want you to remember leaving that conflict resolution is about structured operations. Grievances are about behaviour and safety. HR is here to support you, and you're not expected to handle everything alone. Emotional listening is just as important as procedural knowledge. And if you ever feel uncertain or overwhelmed, please come directly to HR. You're not alone, and we'll always work alongside you to ensure that our team feels safe, supported and heard. Thanks again, both of you. Have a good day.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.